Welcome in, everybody, to another week of UFL Weekly. Week 2 of the 2025 season is in the books. We're looking ahead at week 3. I am Kyle Krajewski, joined by Mr. Beautiful Zach Cole. Zach, how's it going, my man?
It's going well. It's going pretty well. I we hopped on the call and the first thing you did was sneeze, which I really resonated with that. It's I feel like I complain about allergies every week, but it's just getting worse and worse right now. Um,
Yep,
it,
it's
in
spring football and spring allergies. They go hand in hand.
For sure. I'm looking forward to like championship season when it's June and we're past all that. But in other news, I also realized I'm wearing the same exact sweatshirt that I was last week, so that's cool too.
If it helps, I definitely wore my Lumen sweater week 1 and week 2, so
You did,
we're
I noticed.
it's all right. We've got this. Uh, I feel like we're the cartoon characters that don't change their outfits for the 25 seasons that they're active. Um,
We open up the closet and it's 10 hangers with all the same outfit on it.
dude, I literally opened my closet where I have the sweater I would have put on. And it's the same sweater. I'm like, I can't do this. Not for a third week in a row. It's just my go-to at-home sweater.
We'll have to make a conscious effort to switch it up next week.
Yeah, maybe. All right. Before we get into week 3 preview, we have, I guess, 3 big news kind of taking place out of the UFL
Hmm.
this past couple days, really. First of them is San Antonio Brahmas offensive coordinator AJ Smith has stepped down. The team is currently 0-2. I don't think they've scored more than 10 points yet this season. Um, and so AJ Smith, once I mean the past 2 seasons, they were in the championship last year. Um, two two seasons of offensive football that I really thought AJ Smith had great coordinator abilities, but I guess either he's stepping away for a different opportunity or the team is just really going in a different direction. Currently, the wide receiver tight end coach, Peyton Party, steps up as the new OC, and the Brahmas hire a familiar name, Cody Latimer, as their new wide receiver tight end coach, who was on the team last year and spent a few seasons in this spring football XFL, UFL. He was all XFL. Um,
Hmm.
so, a guy who knows the league coming in to help coach, and love to see that league of opportunity.
Yeah, it's really cool to hire someone that young and that recent coming out of the NFL. I'm sorry, out of the NFL and the UFL, XFL, and getting putting him in an immediate role where he's going to make an impact with this team. So obviously, this is not ideal for the Brahmas to be shuffling up the season, shuffling up the coaching staff this early. But who knows? They clearly need to make a change with those first couple results. So let's see what happens, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they got shut out in the championship game last year. 2 games back to back of less than really 10 points. I
Hmm.
guess offense is where it needs to step up. I would have thought that it wouldn't come to coordinator being fired or moving in a different direction, but hey, I'm not here to judge how a team is coordinating their coordinators. Um, Speaking of coordinators, the DC Defenders, I have it here, DC Defenders DC. So they're DC Defenders defensive coordinator. Greg Williams is also out. He appears to have made his transition to as defensive coordinator with Reggie Barlow at Tennessee State a little earlier than expected. I know when Barlow stepped away to become to college coach, it was kind of expected and I think announced that he was bringing his staff from DC with him, but after the UFL season. But it sounds like Barlow got to Tennessee and was just like, Greg, we actually need you now. Um, Blake Williams, the son of Greg Williams, and current or technically previous defensive line coach, is now taking over as coordinator, which keeping it in the family, keeping it in the, I guess, the part of the team that's cooking the most. I hope that this defense, who is the best in the league, could continue what they're doing, but shifting out your defensive coordinator is pretty big.
Yeah, I think that's about as smooth of a transition as it possibly could be, going from Greg
Yeah.
Williams to his son, who's presumably worked under him, been on his staff, learned from him, has the same philosophies, all that good stuff.
Yeah,
So hopefully this shouldn't be too much of a shift, a culture shock for DC, because as you mentioned, they're really cooking on the defensive side of the ball right now, and that kind of thing can really, make things different and can kind of create a rift in the defense cohesivity, is that a word? The
cohesiveness.
cohesiveness of the defense. But with Greg Williams to Blake Williams, it shouldn't be too much of an issue, I don't think.
Yeah, I would hope not. That defense was looking really good. Third piece of notes of news here: the Houston Roughnecks acquire wide receiver Marcus Sims in a trade with the Michigan Panthers in exchange for offensive tackle Cam Carter. This was a bit of a surprise because Sims was looking like one of the better receivers in the league, currently 12th in receiving yards in the league, but also looked like a real, I guess, solid option in this Panthers offense. But also the Roughnecks have had a really, on paper at least, a really good looking wide receiver room for them to kind of make this trade was a little shocking kind of for both sides. But hey, Roughnecks need to win. They need to find some way to get that offense moving. So why not be Sims? Why not take that shot if that option was available to them?
The one thing I will say with the Panthers is that they do really share the ball well. I think they had
Yeah.
15 receptions this week, and it was like with 7 or 8 different guys. So clearly they're confident in the depth of their receiving room. So for them, I guess this makes a little more sense, especially if they needed some additional help on the offensive line. Going out and grabbing a tackle is definitely a good move for them.
Yeah, I mean, upgrade where you can, shift the pieces that you don't think you need. And to the
Yep.
Panthers, it seems like it was Sims for a tackle. All right. Brief recap of last week, really just looking at scores, and then we're going to get into our week 3 preview. The Birmingham Stallions get their first win of the season against the Panthers in a 21-12 victory. The DC Defenders hold off a close one against the Memphis Showboats 17-12. The Renegades stay 2-0 with the win over the Houston Roughnecks with the score of 11-9. And then the St. Louis Battlehawks continue to pave their way to dominance in these games, really on the ground, with the 26-9 win over the San Antonio Brahmas to stay 2-0. So 3 2-0 teams and a few 1-1s and 3 little 0-2 guys here as we head into week 3.
Yeah, and speaking of week 3, I'll kick us off with our first preview of our opening game of the weekend slate, a Friday night game
Oh
between the
yeah.
Renegades and the Stallions. Arlington is traveling to Birmingham, and it kicks off at 8 p.m. on Friday night, which is, I guess, tonight for when you're listening to this. Um, a couple noteworthy points here. Birmingham suffered a pretty big loss last week with their quarterback McGuff going on the IR. Obviously not ideal, but I guess if there was any team that would be comfortable with it happening, it might be the Stallions because Matt Corral stepped right in. He was okay in his replacement. He did go for almost 200 yards passing, but he had 2 interceptions. I'd like to kind of um, chalk that up to him not having been practicing as the starter all week and everything, and maybe getting thrown in and being a little caught off guard. Anyhow, another kind of unfortunate piece of news for him: Deion Kane showed up for them this past week. The first week he was only held to single-digit yards, 8 or 9, I think. But he is going to be inactive this upcoming week, which means that they might have to look some other places for some help. Arlington on the other side, Kyle, you mentioned that they only put up a whopping 11 points, but that was enough to still get the job done
Right.
against the Roughnecks. And the one highlight that I really took away from that, Luis Perez was good, like usual, and Isaiah Winstead was extremely good in the receiving game for them. But Marquette King was the special team player of the week.
Oh yeah.
Which was that's a familiar name. We love him from his Raiders days, his Broncos days in the NFL. But it's good to see him still doing his thing. And unfortunately for Arlington, him winning Player of the Week means that that's the glaring issue with their game. They were punting the ball way too much. They just couldn't really kind of move the ball or get anything productive going. So, with all that being said, they still ran the ball pretty well. Day Day, Hunter, and Kalen Balaj are a nice 1-2 punch there. But let's talk about our odds, our picks for this game. Right now, the line opens up. The Stallions are the favorite at -3.5, and the over/under is set at 39.5. So, Kyle, I'm gonna swing it to you. What do you like?
Yeah, I think we touched on this last week about Matt Corral and McGuff kind of
Hmm.
being a good 1-2 tandem. We saw it in action. We're going to see it kind of really put to play this week. And because of that, I think the Renegades kind of continuing to shoot themselves in the foot. I'm going to take Birmingham -3.5. Um, I think Birmingham needs that win. They're going to come out. I think they just have the pieces put together a little bit better to win. Obviously, they're going to be down Dion Kane, but I mean, Davion and Jace Sternberger are going to step in and just be
Hmm.
just fine. So
Definitely.
give me them -3.5. Give me the under though. I think Arlington could put up points, but I think after putting up just 11 last week, they're going to hold themselves a little bit better. I think they're going to hold themselves back again this week, especially against a little bit more competent team in Birmingham. So I'm going to take the under here and see a little bit less points than I want to.
Yeah, I think honestly, I think I might go with you on both of these picks here. I do like Birmingham -3.5. I think that even though they're changing hands from McGuff to Corral, they're still a very solid team, top to bottom. They'll find ways to get it done in the receiving game, even without Dion Kane. We saw that in week one. I really have a hard time picking against Birmingham, even though I think I did it last week and it bit me. But um, we'll call it learning my lesson. And I'm also going to take the under in this one. I need to see Arlington start scoring some more points for me to really be confident taking them in any sort of over situations. So I'm riding with you on this one, Kyle. I know that's not exciting or anything, but I
Nope.
think that I think those are probably the two safest bets this week. So
Yeah, I really want Luis Perez to step back up. I mean, he's still leading the league in passing yards, but get the job done in the red zone, guys. I want to see some points,
he,
even though I'm
I'm
picking
trying to
the
think
under.
of I'm trying to think of like an NFL quarterback that reminds me of that, who just goes for. He's almost like Jameis Winston.
I was gonna say there's Jameis. I think
Jameis
Luis doesn't
Winston.
throw as many interceptions, but
He's just slinging the ball all over the place, and no matter who it is, it's his team. The other team doesn't matter.
Jameis steps in and you'll have a 500-yard passing game any given week. It could be the best defense. Jameis is gonna find a way.
It doesn't matter.
Second game of the weekend, Saturday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we have the Houston Roughnecks going into Memphis to take on the Showboats. This is the battle for their first win for both teams. Both teams are 0-2 going into this game. The Roughnecks last week, the defense looked good. We saw they held the Renegades to 11. Their offense just couldn't score more than 9. But that defense was led by safety Leon O'Neal, having 7 tackles, a sack, a tackle for loss, a forced fumble. The defense looked like they had their pieces together. Their offense just needs to find its rhythm, and maybe Sims is the answer to that. But nothing this past week was really clicking. Um, Head coach Johnson says he wants to find a way to run more, and if that way is to have the lead in these games, maybe they'll give that a try. But this Roughnecks team didn't look great these past 2 weeks. Defense kind of figured things out, and hopefully their offense does shortly. On the Showboat side, wide receiver Jonathan Adams continues to be the star of the show. Um, I know going into week one or after week one, their interim coach kind of said Adams was NFL caliber. So going into week two, we kind of expected to see him to be featured, and featured he was. 9 receptions, 128 receiving yards. Um, we saw much more EJ Perry at quarterback this game. Head coach Wizenhunt said he was happy with the performance, but we most like likely get so we'll most likely get some more Perry this week, but I think they really I think they're one of those teams that we're going to see a little bit more 50-50 or split quarterback in play for these teams, for the Showboats. So I think we see more Perry, though. I think he played a competent game last week. And I think this is a team that's smart enough to stick to a quarterback, even though Wisenhunt says he wants to split them. I think this is a team that finds a quarterback and sticks with them. However, I think we're going to see a Jonathan Adams versus a solid defense here in Houston to kind of be the, I guess, to put a bow on how this game's going to look. We're going to see that take place. Looking at our picks, Zach, the Showboats are favored -4.5, over under set to 35.5. Who you got?
I'm gonna go ahead and put some confidence in Ken Wisenhunt, in EJ Perry, and Jonathan Adams, and I'm gonna rock with Memphis -4.5 here. I just think that this is a team that's figuring it out, and a team that still is lacking an identity and still doesn't know what they want to be. And I just think that the Roughnecks, I do want them to get it together and figure it out and see what they can make out of this season, but I just don't know that it's going to be this week, especially against a hungry 0-2 team that's looking to prove themselves and kind of looks to have figured something out over the last week since they've gotten Wisenhunt back on board and cooking again. As for the over under at 35.5, I'm going to go over in this game. I don't necessarily have much of a reason, but I think that this could be an over here. I think that I'm not going to say it's going to be a super high scoring game, but I'm thinking maybe somewhere in the low 20s to the teens, and that'll get us over that 35-point margin. So, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. What about you?
I'm joining you on Memphis -4.5. I think this is a Memphis team or a team in this league that slow start, and we're going to see them kind of cook as the weeks go on, or at least figure things out a little bit better. They had a close one this past week against DC, so I have some faith in them to kind of cover this -4.5 against Houston. But I'm going to take the under. I think defense is going to be oddly strong in this one, especially on the Houston side. I think the Showboat side is slowly improving. But I think we're definitely going to see, I'm blanking on name. Boogie Roberts for the Showboat side is kind of their key piece there, and he's going to dominate. So I think we're going to see a little bit less points here. So give me the under 35.5.
I like it. I definitely like your reasoning. I can see that happening for sure. All right, so moving on to our last game of the week, we have the San Antonio Brahmas visiting the Michigan Panthers. Two teams that are coming off of losses this week. The Brahmas still have yet to find a win. They're 0-2, and the Panthers are now 1-1 after falling to the Stallions last week. We mentioned that there is kind of a lot of turmoil going on with the Brahmas right now. You know, they're not the same old Brahmas that we know and love. And with AJ Smith stepping down and shuffling around some coordinators and things, who really knows what we're going to get going from them. However, I did pull out a couple bright spots from them. Anthony McFarland and John Trey Kirkland were both pretty decent. And Jacob Harris is actually the second leading receiver in the league, so he's also kind of a bright spot for them. They threw in Kellen Mond at quarterback last week, who's a former college star, former NFL backup, just kind of athletic dude. I don't really know how else to explain him, but he did an okay job, I guess. He didn't find the end zone, and I think he had an interception or two, so that wasn't particularly great. However, on the other side, the Panthers also kind of struggled last week against a pretty good Stallions team. I think the story of the game there was they went down 18-0 in that game and kind of had to claw themselves out of the hole. So they did, however, get a 3-point conversion, which is very, very cool.
Huge,
We
love
we
it.
love those. Bryce Perkins he looks to be a pretty solid quarterback, and I would say probably in the upper echelon of the quarterbacks in the league. He went for 132 passing, a touchdown, even had 30 rushing, which is how he ended up punching in that 3-point conversion we were talking about. So realistically, I think that these two teams are. This should be a pretty clear winner in this one. I personally think that Michigan should have a pretty good, a pretty good handle on this game. But we were talking earlier where, when a coordinator gets fired and sometimes a team is just squirrely and fired up and inspired to go out and get that win. So we're looking at the line at being set at -5.5 right now in Michigan's favor, and the over-under is set at 36.5. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to you, Kyle. What are you taking?
Ooh. Yeah, give me Michigan -5.5. I think this Michigan team is better than I think most people think. I like this Michigan team. You've picked a good one here, Zach. So I'm gonna take the -5.5. I think the Brahmas need to figure a lot out. And especially on the Michigan side, we're gonna see that the QB experiment between Perkins and Etling. But I think it's going to be enough to kind of give them a lead and be able to try that experiment a little bit better. Ooh, give me. I hate to say it. Give me the under again. Give me the under 36.5. I think the Brahmas struggling to score is going to really, really show here.
Yeah, I think I think this can go two ways. I think there are two very clear cut ways where they're either gonna like play insane off of all the hype and everything, or it's just gonna be even worse than it already was. And I'm kind of leaning on the same side with you, where I think it might be worse than it already was. So I'm gonna take Michigan -5.5. And I think I'm also going to.
Ooh,
You
say
know
it.
what? Nah, screw it. I'm gonna go over. Give me the points. Who knows?
Way to go.
Um, I, I think we could just see. I don't know, a fun game. Hopefully Michigan kind of lets loose after struggling last week a little bit against the Stallions. Someone else I forgot to mention: Michigan did have the defensive player of the week this past week. DJ Miller had 2 interceptions, and including a pretty nice one-handed. If you guys get a chance, go back and check that one out. But
Yeah.
kind of really cool to see that their defense is clicking. We know that their offense is there. You mentioned Etling, you mentioned Perkins. So I think that Michigan could find it in them to put up some big points. So give me the over, and I'll take Michigan -5.5, although I do think it might even be a little more than that. So
Yeah. Final game of the week. Probably the game of the week.
did
Sunday.
I biff up? Did I say that the last game was the final game of the week? I think I did.
Well, Zach,
I'm
there's
a
4 games
knucklehead
a week.
sometimes.
Final game of the week, Sunday at 3 p.m. We have the DC Defenders versus St. Louis Battlehawks in St. Louis. Game of the week, as this is the battle of undefeated teams. Uh, this is probably between two teams that oddly have it the most figured out. Obviously, until DC moves on with their defensive coordinator.
Mhm.
However, I don't think we talked about this already. There shouldn't be too much of a shakeup here. So this is two teams that probably have it the most figured out. St. Louis quarterback Manny Wilkins last week, week 2 offensive player of the week. Way to go, Manny. But running back Jacob Sailors ran for 46 yards and 3 touchdowns. This is, I mean, last week they obliterated the Brahmas, 26-9, and kind of really held that game in check. While the defenders last week, their defensive special teams were again the star of the show. Offense continued to struggle inside the red zone. Last week, a blocked field goal really helped halt a Showboat's comeback. So the defender's defense, shakes me up every single time. The defender's defense continues to be, I guess, the mainstay here, and to a point where I don't see that shaking up, even with a new defensive coordinator. It seems like that's their personality, and I don't don't see them shying away from that or see them shifting away from that focus. So this is game of the week, 2-2-0 teams, two teams that have it figured out the most. DC still needs to figure out offense, but this defense is really helping them hold these games in line. But Vegas has this as the widest line. St. Louis -7, over under set 38.5, highest over under, widest point spread. And it sounds like, oh no, the Birmingham game was 39.5. I take that back. But widest point spread for two teams that look really good on paper. So Zach, what you got going on here?
So I'm a little confused by the line on this one. I know that they're switching defensive coordinators, and that's a big deal. I get that, but I just don't see a world where this game gets that far out of hand, where -7 is. I guess what I'm trying to say is I think DC is going to keep this one close. I think that their defense will continue to click on the level that it's been clicking on so far. We know that they have winners in their backfield. With just the quarterback, the rushing room. I can't see this getting too far out of a -7 range here. So give me DC +7, and I'm also going with the points here. I'm going to go over 38.5. I think that this could be a pretty. I think that this could be a pretty high scoring affair. So give me DC +7 and give me over 38.5.
I feel like I'm going against my bloodline here as a DC faithful. I'm going to take St. Louis -7. That is an insanely wide spread, but I think this St. Louis offense is just different. Obviously, I want to be proven wrong, but I think Manny Wilkins and Jacob Sailors are just like keeping things in control here for St. Louis. And I think they do it again this week. I think DC struggles to capitalize on their drives and put more than just a field goal up is really going to hinder them in this game, because if it's drive, and it's St. Louis touchdown, DC field goal, St. Louis touchdown, DC field goal, we're going to see them really fall behind. So I'm taking St. Louis -7, but I'm joining you on the over. I think we're going to see some points. These are two teams that can drive. DC just can't capitalize. And for that, I think we're seeing points. So give me the over 38.5.
We'll see.
Beautiful. And as I wrap up here quickly, because I know Zach's got to jump. Zach, if you have to disappear, feel free. But that was week 3 preview. Thank you for tuning in. Next week, we'll have week 4 preview with hopefully a lot less notes, because we will hopefully have less coordinators shaking around. But I would like to see some more trades. That was fun to see. Outside of that, we are UFL Weekly. Find us on X, or previously known as Twitter, at UFL_weekly. I keep things posted, updated news. Find us on YouTube if you are listening to us. Find us in podcast form if you are watching us. But overall, thank you for tuning in. Zach, it's an absolute pleasure previewing week 3 with you. And I look forward to talking to you next week.
Always is, my friend.
Have a great week, everybody. Enjoy week 3. Go Defenders.
See ya.